This was the perfect grant to really explore some of these ideas that we had around belonging and well-being and mental health amongst doctoral students of color. I think what was kind of really affirming about this project as well is that it wasn't just simply about critiquing the university as an institution. It was also about imagining alternative futures. My name is Kavita Ramakrishnan, and I am an associate professor in the School of International Development, and I'm an urban geographer by discipline.
My name is Esther Priyadharshini. I'm also an associate professor in education. So I work in the School of Education and Lifelong Learning.
I'm Farah Ghaffar, and I am a doctoral student at UEA, and my research looks at austerity and belonging.
This was the perfect grant to really explore some of these ideas that we had around belonging and well-being and mental health amongst doctoral students of color, and to really understand some of these larger issues around access and around this gap, right? So there's a lot of research that talks about how we don't have the same levels of continuation into doctoral programs and retention of primarily Black students and leading on to Black staff. And a lot of it, I think, stems from this idea of belonging. So how are these students, how do they feel within the university during their doctoral studies, and how do we understand how they articulate and think about belonging? And our idea here was to really think about, well, how do we partner in a meaningful way with doctoral students? Really thinking about collaboration and co-production and using creative methods. So going beyond this idea of kind of traditional conversation, but really trying to kind of unpack these real kind of fears and aspirations and the kind of full gamut of emotions that doctoral students have about their experiences.
Well, none of us are from a sort of psychology background, so we're from education, we're from geography, but we all kind of feel that belonging is an integral kind of part of the student kind of experience, and particularly kind of thinking about postgraduate students and the kind of liminal space that they occupy. So across that kind of project, we've got an advisory board. We've been sort of working with student services and just trying to get a sense of like a more holistic sense of belonging. So working with them and their expertise in mental health and well-being.
We were very keen that at every stage the project was as inclusive as possible. So from recruiting participants, so we tried to attract people from as many disciplines and as many backgrounds as possible. So our little collective at the end is composed of people from most continents and most parts of the world. Also, in the way we conducted the research, the methods that we used, we tried to use very creative, arts-based methods. So you didn't need to be very articulate and, in English, say, if it wasn't your first language, you didn't need to be very good at that. You could work with images and sounds and pictures, photos, and kind of contribute in a different way. The output of the project, one of the main ones, is a little zine. So it's something that we all compiled together, and it is an unconventional kind of output, but we were able to use everyone who's part of the project to contribute to it, and they could each contribute in a way we think was, as meaningful for them as possible. We're also trying to write a paper at the moment, and similarly, we've tried to do that together as a collective, all of us sitting together, writing bits and pieces of it, and now we're stitching it together.
We didn't want to put ourselves in the roles where we're sort of the teachers or anything like that. It was very much about having this equal relationship where we were all sharing quite kind of personal stories about being in academia or about kind of racism or discrimination or things that we've encountered, as well as the students that we were kind of like working with as partners. So I think a lot of it was about kind of making people feel that they could kind of be vulnerable and open in those situations, and I think often that's quite difficult within academia. You don't have those spaces that are open, and so really glad that we kind of spent quite a lot of time kind of building that up, and I feel like towards the end we really do feel like a community.
Over time, I think being part of the collective, we did start to build some shared vocabularies and shared understandings of how these spaces, or the lack of space, I guess to say, in the university are affecting us, but also how we could all kind of collectively envision a different way of kind of being. And if our little collective was one way of imagining that, then that's something that is, that is powerful. And I guess this raises questions too about where we go from here, and perhaps that's something too that my colleague Esther can reflect on.
We're nearly at the very last month and the last few days of our year-long project, and we've done a lot of really interesting things. So we've come out with the zine, and then we launched it in our public library. So recently we were invited by the organisers of the Norfolk Black History Month to allow our zine to be exhibited along with other artefacts in this region. We're trying to reach out beyond just the academic circles to talk about our project. Our final academic paper is also, thinking about reflecting critically on all our experiences throughout this year and finishing this, but also looking ahead and trying to find ways of keeping our collective going, also because some students will finish their studies, some will have moved on. So we have this challenge of how do we keep the spirit of the collective alive, even if the actual people may not be on campus.